Welcome back to another tier list. Howdy partner, how you doing? Today we're covering Katars. Shout out to one of my earliest YouTube subscribers, Joao Mendes. He requested this one tier list to help him out, and I am more than willing to do anything for my viewers. So if you have a request, leave a comment and I will read it and I'll respond it, and maybe I will cover your tier list next. Alright, let's get started. We're doing Katars today, and as you can see here, we have a little, these aren't Katars, these are arrows, and these are very important to be in this tier list because arrows are used along with Katars. Alright, so I'll be also ranking this and explaining why they're so important. Ready? Let's get started. First off, Chakram. Chakram is one of the most OP items if you're having a meteor assault build. This is a build that you do damage around yourself. There's a splash damage around yourself. It can do absurd amount of damage. However, it allows you to take a lot of damage. If you choose this between this or the ability of having, let's say, Green Tooth, I much prefer Green Tooth. Chakram, I don't like it so much. The base attack is low. This hit, it's cool and all, but it's not necessarily good. Regardless, Chakram is a mediocre Katar compared to all the other ones. Doesn't give any status, any major status or debuffs. So we're gonna put a Chakram at a low C tier. I don't like it. I think it's one of the worst ones ever, and that's why we're keeping it there. Next up, Wild Beast Claw. This one, not a lot of people use it and they ignore it a lot because they don't know what it means and what it does. However, this is really important if you're trying to do things against mobs that heal themselves a lot. For example, a specific build for this is to kill Cornus, which does full heal if you leave it alone. So you can lower its heal, or this can also be great use for WOE, so you can debuff people. The 20% effectiveness of reducing it, all healing effects basically. It's really good, but only for PvP and hardly ever for PvM. So this is an S tier for WOE because of it has one slot and it does this right here, and you can even change it to 40%, which is, imagine you're getting healed for 2k each time by your priest and you just start relying on that. And actually priests cannot see their heals in WOE, so if it starts getting reduced, they won't even be able to tell. So this is a great thing to really abuse, and people will never understand why this is happening. You just hide, do Cream Tooth, and this should be likely to happen. Because of that, because it's not great, or it's only good for WOE, I'm still gonna put it at a C tier, all the way down here. You will never use it unless it's for what I just told you, right? And it's only for WOE really that you want to use, because that critical wounds will not be so great. Next one, Unholy Touch. Unholy Touch, curse an enemy when you attack. The success rate is 2% and it gives you -1 crit rate. The property is shadow or darkness, and the attack is one of the highest ones actually, but this is actually not a good Katar at all. It's good for you to have as your first elemental Katar that is darkness or undead, you know, because the other one is undead. So I will put this at a B tier because it does have an elemental. It does have a chance of cursing the enemy. However, it does take 1 crit down, which is not a lot if you have a lot of crit already, and it is indestructible, which is very important when you're fighting certain mobs that break your weapon. Next up, Specialty Jewel. A lot of people consider this an S tier list, but I do not, because of this right here. It has a backlash effect, which causes bleeding effect on yourself by 0.1%. Does it happen often? No, but I think because this is one of the only few Katars that have 4 slots, you have to put this at a very high rate. But I have run the calculations, I have ran all of the math. You can do it because I played an assassin and I got really obsessed with the idea of maximizing my damage, and unfortunately Specialty Jewel will only require you to do a lot more investment and not get so much for your buck. So if I were you, I would always prefer a Katar with 2 slots, upgraded high level, than a Specialty Jewel level 10 because the base attack is very low, and the upgrade per level for con compared to Iridicon weapons, when you upgrade, the attack differential is higher as well. So Katar will eventually be so much more damage than a specialty juror, which will not be worth it. And specialty jurors are actually kind of difficult to farm, so you're not gonna have a lot of chances to have a lot of these. So because of that, I will be putting specialty juror at an A tier, which not a lot of people agree with. All right, next one, Sharpened Legbone of Ghoul. Quite straightforward. It just gives an elemental of undead to the weapon. This is pretty straightforward. I feel every elemental weapon should be at least B to A tier. Some S tiers, but you will see why. But this one also does not have any debuffs to the enemy when using it. It's very good for fighting holy mobs, but that's about it. And because of that, I will be putting this at a B tier. Next up, Loki's Nail. Loki's Nail gives you a chance of giving bleeding to the enemy when attack at 3% chance. This is really good, but again, another very difficult mob to hunt. No slot. Bleeding is really cool, but a 3% chance, it's not good enough to be meaningful. So because of that, we'll be putting Loki's Nail also down here at a C tier. Actually, Loki's Nail is one of the F tier. I'll put in Loki's Nails at F tier. I really hate it. I think it's the most useless one of all. Does not give any slot, does not give anything useful. Bleeding is good, but only if it's effective, like all the time. Next up, Krishna. This is a big boy item. Krishna has 2 slots. It drops from the Remis Gillet, the MVP, and increases your Green Tooth ability by 10%. And when performing a physical melee attack, there is a small chance of casting Sonic Blow level 1 or the highest level the player knows. So this is basically you having an Injustice card on your Katar already. If you were like me and you level up your assassin mobbing and using Green Tooth, this is one of the greatest Katars you can have. So for me, this is an easy S tier. Alright, next up, Katar of Raging Blaze. This is a great one because it can inflict silence on top of being a fire elemental weapon. Fire elemental weapons, especially early on, are amazing. They kill almost every mob and you can increase your damage on like 50% of the mobs in a game basically. So because of the fire elemental, because of the silence here, and you see later, we can add a mute arrow and increase this even higher. And Katar of Blazing Rays can also have 3 slots. Now anything with 3 slots is S tier for assassins because usually they will be one of the best ones. I'm gonna say besides Jur, but I'm saying all of these elementals will be S tier, right? So Katar of Raging Blaze will be one of the S tiers for sure. The silence is amazing. You can, for example, here's what I do. You wanna hunt a Gav card, you go with your assassin there, you hide, you put Katar of Raging Blaze, Mute Arrow, and you equip 3 Metaller cards on your Katar of Raging Blaze. With the Mute Arrow and with the Katar, your silence rate chance. You hit like 3 Green Tooths on it and you'll silence, and then you'll be able to kill a Gav with no problem at all. Like he won't cast any skills out because you'll be silent. So that's one of the many ways that I have abused the silence status on this Katar and used the other things to stack on top of it to make it even more powerful. Next up is Katar of Quaking. Inflict the blind status on nearby a low chance, and this is a really good one. Earth Elemental and the blind will give you a status of decreasing their hit, so that means your fleet increases. So this is also a debuff on the enemy. Blind is not so effective, but it can be used very well if you know how to properly apply this effect on people. Blind will also limit the amount of view that a mob may have, so that way you might use it to just avoid fighting it, because once you come out of hide, it won't see you if it's a bit further away from you. Because of that, but blind is more difficult to use, a bit more confusing. I will put this at an A tier. I'll keep behind in front because I like the elemental of it. Alright, next up, Katar of the Piercing Wind. This is one of the best ones. Very difficult to get because he only drops from Joker, the same chance as the card. But the Sleep and the Wind elemental. Oh, when this is one of the things that, let me tell you, it's so good because the Sleep can really break down a mob and stop all of its actions, and you can just leave it alone there without any issues. So this status is really good, very difficult to have. Because of that, because it's wind as well, I'll put it at S tier. It's one of the best. You can go to, you get one of these and you will level up Icicle dungeons, you know, where the marine dungeons are at, and you can stay there until level 99 because everything there gets hit by this. And then you can slot it, put 2 Flora cards and a Biddle King, which will give you 5 SP per mob you kill, and you'll never have to worry about SP again. Next up, Katar of the Frozen Icicle. This is another of the famous one, but this one freezes and it has the water element. Pretty straightforward. We'll put it at S tier. It's great status. Frozen, when you freeze a mob, it loses all of its defense, so you will do more damage. Well, technically we won't be able to do more damage because you have water elemental, so when it freezes it changes to water, but it's a very good status to have, and I will put it at S tier because once you can slot it, you go to Magma Dungeon and you have 3 Scorpion cards here. It's over. Your damage will be bonkers. And you can also put, let's say you don't want to go crit, you want to put a Sidewinder card on this. Everything is amazing for this weapon. Next up is the basic Katar 2. This, I believe, is one of the few S tiers that has nothing, because this Katar is the only one that when I done the math of upgrading it, this gives you the best results out of all the other ones that are neutral. So this is your best Katar with 2 slots. Like, you want to put 2 to 3 cards, this is the best. Like, avoid the 3rd card. The 2 slots, it's all you need. All right, this is our best S tier with nothing. That's why we're putting it there. Next up is Jur 3, and Jur 3 is another great one, but we will be putting it at an A tier. It has a basic attack of 125, which is a little bit less than Katar, and the upgrade is with INFILTRATOR, which is level 2 weapon. The damage won't be so much higher, and usually an extra card won't do that much more damage if your basic damage is not high enough. So because of that, I will be putting it at an A tier, even behind the specialty Jur, because I think specialty Jur could even be a little bit better than Jur 3. Next up is Jamadhar 1, and Jamadhar 1, a lot of people like it because it has the best base attack, but it only has 1 slot. And in reality, a lot of people, this is like the best early game Katar for you to have. You get one of these, you put a Sidewinder card, and that's your end game weapon basically. So because of that, I will put this at an S, at the highest A tier, because I still value Katar as the highest one, even compared to this. Next up, Inverse Scale, and this is the only elemental weapon that is holy, and it also has this really cool effect of causing ailments to all enemies in the 5/5 cell around you. Dude, this is amazing. Not a lot of weapons in a game have a holy elemental already set. This allows you to hunt so many places without a priest, even though it has no slot. Just by having this and this ailment right here, this automatically will put it at an S tier. The lowest S tier for sure, because I still value all of these things more. Next up, this is the bad boy. Oh my god, dude. This dude right here. This is the OG, the OP, the everything you want. Oh my god. Infiltrator. Infiltrator is the best Katar in the game. By far. You can slot it, and all of these stats are insane. 50% increase on demi-humans. What? 50% increase damage on demi-humans. 3 defense, 5 fleet, 2 perfect dodge, and you can get a slot on top of it. I'll tell you my biggest secret once I get to the arrow for it, okay? But let me tell you, there is a way for you to become filthy rich with just an infiltrator slotted, or it doesn't even have to be slotted, just an infiltrator and an Endall of wind with you at all times. All right, and I'll tell you why in a second, but first let's put this where it belongs, the highest S tier. Next up is Joao Katar, and Joao Katar is amazing. I love it because it gives the plus 30 hit, which is a third of an MVP card, which is insane, and it gives the ability to do full strip, which is kind of an intriguing thing to do because it's like a bunch of debuffs, right? Each strip does a different debuff. It's very hard for it to happen because it also relates to your dexterity, so if you don't have enough dexterity, the strip won't work as effective, and strip doesn't work on a lot of them. I will put this at a strong A tier, probably the highest A tier we have, because I truly like even more than Jamadhar because of the status it gives. This plus 30 hit, it's so great because it can be the difference between you hitting a high-end mob or not. Next up is Bloody Roar. And Bloody Roar, a lot of people know about this, but Bloody Roar is so incredibly good because it pierces the defense of demi-human monsters. Of course, it does all this debuff to you, which is terrible, and you become nothing. But if you are in the party, you enchant yourself with EDP, you're sitting on SW, and you're just doing damage, I believe this can be really fucking amazing, only if you have the support to do so. And the other opportunity is to do green tooth with it. You change to green tooth and you just do the damage you have to, and then you swap out. Because of this, which is a really good status, but minus this, right, I'm gonna put this at the highest A tier we have. I think it's really amazing, but very situational as well. You have to know how to use it or it will kill you. Next up is Bloody Tears, and this, I believe, ready? Not a lot of people know about this. This is another one that gives bleeding effect, but much higher chance, and in an area format, not in a single one. So if you're mobbing, I believe this is the best Katar with 2 slot that we have available for assassin. The base attack is really good. It's level 4, so per upgrade you get a little bit more attack. It will be almost impossible to get to +9, but don't worry about it. This is silly. Just get to +7, pull 2 cards, and eventually you can get the bleeding status in the group. So like when you mob a bunch of mobs and then you start doing green tooth, eventually it can happen to all of them. So because of that, I will put this at the second highest, at the third highest S tier, because I believe it's that great. Now let's go into our special case scenarios, which are our arrows. First up, did you know that frozen arrow, you can equip this arrow upon doing one of the quests for throwing daggers, right, which is the poison dagger. I'm not even going to cover that because that one's silly, because there's a poison arrow as well. Imagine this. All right, you go to Rachel's Sanctuary with your assassin. You have an infiltrator with skeleton worker card. You end all your weapon with wind. What would that do? Nothing, because Vanberg and Icicle, they are both neutral mobs, so either neutral damage or wind damage does the same amount of damage. However, once you added this to the math, you can now freeze a few of these mobs. And once you freeze them, the wind element of your Katar will double your damage. Remember what I told you? When it freezes, it loses all defense? Yeah, it will lose all damage, and then it will maximize your damage. You're basically giving yourself a Lex Eterna with arrows. So this is how important a frozen arrow is. And frozen arrow is an S tier. Because of this free status that you can abuse with a wind and dull in your weapon and fighting neutral mobs. Next up is Flash Arrow, and Flash Arrow blinds. Blind, as we spoke, decreases their hit and vision, and it's a very difficult thing to use. It's a very, very difficult thing to use, and it can honestly mess you up a lot of times. Because of that, I'm gonna put it at a C tier. I think it's one of the worst ones. I don't like blind as a status that much because it's very complicated to use effectively. Next up is Cursed Arrow, and this is your best arrow too. Cursed Arrow does many things. It will decrease the defense, it will decrease their attack, and it will slow their movement speed for a long time. So because of that, I will put Cursed at an S tier. Actually, I'll put it in front of Frozen because it's applicable to a much more wide variety of mobs than Frozen. Frozen is the best one to do DPS in the scenario that I told you, but it doesn't apply to every single scenario. Next up is Mute Arrow, and this is a thing that I told you guys. Mute Arrow along with Katar of Raging Blaze, you combine these two and you can mute a lot of mobs in 3 to 5 green tooths. That way, if you have to kill a mob that is constantly attacking you with spell attacks that you find so incredibly annoying, you can just do this. Equip this arrow, equip the fire Katar, and bam, you're donezo. So that's why I'll put it at an A tier. It's not as good as these two, but it's great regardless. Next up is Poison Arrow, and Poison Arrow, poison will only really affect players more than mobs, because yes, they will lose HP, but it's not as good as bleeding. So because of that, I'll put the Poison Arrow at a F tier. I don't think it's great at all, and you can use the throwing knife itself. Next up is Sleep Arrow, and Sleep Arrow is really good, but not a lot of people know how to use it, because as soon once you break, you put it to sleep, it will break right out of it, and it won't add any damage or anything like that. So because of that, I'll put it also at a C tier. And the last one is Stun Arrow, and Stun Arrow is another S tier because stun is so good. Once you stun a mob, they can dodge, their fleet goes to 0, and you can hit all hits on it. So I will put the Stun Arrow at an S tier, and that should complete our tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Joao, if you're watching, let me know if you learned anything. I'm sharing all of my experience here. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope I see you guys next time. Leave a comment to anything you want to see, and I'll be here. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Peace.